Good morning, Rebekah. It's great to see you, a colleague here in the state of Washington.
Good morning, Dr. K. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor.
Oh my God, Rebekah, so formal, not Dr. K. You know, we're friends.
Okay.
Call me Christina.
All right.
We have a world out there, an audience of people who would love to get to know you. And so I'm so excited about having a conversation with you today.
Thank you.
So I know you're at Highland. You've been there for over 10 years. And you can correct my numbers. And you were a principal there at one point, and now you're the executive director of teaching, learning, and leading. But you're making a transition. So I'd love to hear about why this transition, why now?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I just celebrated 18 years as a leader in Highline Public Schools, just south of Seattle. And I've had the privilege of serving as a principal, a director in central office, an executive director in a couple of departments. It has been an absolute honor, and it has made me grow and has made me part of their family. And I'm so thankful. As I think about my career trajectory and still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, just thinking about how I might be able to impact other students across the region. And so I had an opportunity to interview and become appointed through that process in Kent School District, which is right next door. I have the privilege of serving as the new Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and that position will begin just next week on June 1st. And I look forward to the opportunity to spread my wings and grow in the capacity that my heart leads me to, and the different ways of equity that I can bring into teaching and learning, again, across the region.
So congratulations. What a great move for you. And I love that you are dedicated to this great part of the country, this beautiful part of the country, where there's just this opportunity to lead in some really interesting ways here. And so as you move into Kent School District, I wish you all the best in that work. And one of the things I noticed in your LinkedIn is that you call yourself an equity-driven leader. What does that mean to you exactly?
Thank you for the question and the accountability of that. When I say equity driven, I am driven towards a goal and a vision. So not saying I'm the expert, but I am driven by diversity, equity, my core values around racial justice. That is at a personal and a professional level. So as a mother of children of color, as a child of immigrant parents from South Korea, personally, I have had my own experiences, and I see the opportunities to serve richly diverse communities, to be able to provide rich experiences where some challenges and barriers may get in the way, whether it's language or socioeconomics, understanding the American school system. There's so many different ways that we would be able to serve as an equity-driven leader, and also really intentionally using an equity and a strength-based lens to see the richness of the diversity that our students and families bring to learning communities. So in Highline and also in Kent, richly diverse, Kent is one of the in the top 10 most diverse districts in the country. I choose to serve there, and it is a privilege. When I think about what it means to be an equity-driven leader, it's thinking and going beyond what's in front of us. So what I mean by that is we might be able to look at data with state assessment scores, but really digging in and looking at data trends around disproportionality. Where are we seeing the most disproportionality in academics? And most recently, I've had the opportunity to serve as one of the co-leads in a multi-year journey of closing and narrowing the disproportionality gap with discipline of specific groups of students of color. In those spaces, I think what's important as an equity-driven leader is that you're doing the root cause analysis. You're looking not just at high-level data, but you're also really intentionally listening to the voices of the students, listening to the voices of the students at the margin. And so it takes the extra effort and thinking But if you are committed as an equity-driven leader, I believe that you get to the richness of the root cause analysis data that helps to inform transformational change. And that is what I continue to aspire to do, and hope that those experiences I can bring in my new role, and then also be able to leave behind those important practices and lenses that we've been able to sharpen throughout the last several years in my previous district.
And so that equity mindset that you're bringing to Kent, that you brought to Highline, that you bring to all of your work and your national organizations that you're a part of and networks that you're a part of. I love that it's grounded in student agency and voice, and that being an important part of how you then make decisions that are really driven by what students want and need and what they're articulating. Thank you for sharing that. It was interesting in February, if you're an Ed Week reader, there was an article about why there aren't more Asian American leaders in the K-12 space. What's interesting about that, as you and I both know, it's not a pipeline issue. There are a pipeline of teachers and leaders who are Asian American in this country, and a growing number of Asian American students nationally. And so if it's not a pipeline, what's your perspective on what's happening there?
I have a lot of perspectives about that. So first of all, I want to celebrate back in 2005, when I first became a principal. I was 29 years old, became a principal of a pretty large elementary school. And it was such an honor for our Korean community, because I was the first Korean American woman to become a principal in Washington State. It was in the Korean newspaper that, reached across the Pacific Northwest and down to California. I got phone calls from old friends saying, hey, you're in the Korean newspaper, because it was such a celebration. And being a principal and educator is such an esteemed occupation, specifically in Korea. And so there was just a lot of pride there. So I want to celebrate that. But then when I look across the last almost 2 decades, sadly, I don't see an expansion of more Asian American leaders. I think one of our first Asian American superintendents was hired last year in this area, and then most recently another, and that's a celebration. But a year ago, I was reflecting and really thinking about, and I could not pinpoint any Asian American superintendent in the Pacific Northwest, which has such a high growing population of the community and the demographic. And so it really left me to wonder, what is behind that? Just today on LinkedIn, I saw a colleague post the study from the Asian American Foundation around Asian perceptions, sense of belonging, perceptions of the increase of Asian hate crimes. And there were so many points where I said, yes, that, oh my goodness, I agree. And I think one of the really big components is that there's not enough leaders that look like us for others to aspire. And so an interesting story is that when I was first looking for a teaching job, I went to a job fair at the Tacoma Dome. And I was just looking across. I really wanted to work in a diverse school district. And most of the leaders that I saw at the different booths were white facing. I saw an Asian male leader, and I directly went to him. And I asked him what his job was, and he said he was a principal. It's the first time back in 2000, that I saw a leader that looked like me. So then I went into teaching. I ended up applying and becoming a teacher in that district because somebody looked like me. And then I taught, and then I had an opportunity to go be a principal intern. And I specifically sought out leaders that I could learn from. And there was such a small population of Asian principals, but I went and I took a year off, no pay, interned at 2 different schools with 2 Asian female principals. And it was an amazing experience. One of them continues to be a mentor and a role model almost 20 years later. So all that to say, and to answer your question, Christina, I believe that there's not enough representation for other Asian American educators to aspire into those leadership roles, because I really do think that representation and modeling and mentoring matter. And the last thing I'll share is most recently, I started an Asian American female affinity group out of central office in Highline. I was noticing that in the affinity groups, BIPOC or leaders of color, that I wasn't hearing the voices as much of the Asian Americans that were coming to that space. It could be cultural, it could be the specific topic. I wasn't sure, and I was really thinking about where's that silence coming from? So I think the other important element to consider is creating spaces and safe spaces for Asian Americans to really be able to realize their voice, build that confidence, and have that community that they're able to build together. You know, I've led other administrators of color groups just organically over the last many years, but really found community with the sisters in that space. And just most recently, we kind of came together, said goodbye to me since I was moving on, and it just feels amazing to just see how the different efforts that come together to continue that group allow for that space to continue.
What a great set of stories, right? And perspective that you have and bring to this. One of the things that I love about affinity groups is that when we meet within affinity groups, we also see so much diversity within those groups, right? And so when we talk about the Asian American or Pacific Islander even community, these are diverse groups. Just like we, you know, oftentimes lump together the Black community. It's very diverse, the Hispanic community, the Native community. And so there's a lot of beautiful within group diversity as well, which is a strength. But there's also the need, like you said, for that space to say, what are we experiencing? How do we support one another? How do we work more in the collective to support one another so that there is support across groups within the Asian American community?
Amen. Yes.
So one of the things, Rebekah, that we know from national data is that the data on women of color entering the superintendency is stubborn. I think that's the best way I can describe it. So while there's been some increase of women overall, for women of color in the superintendent seat specifically, it feels as if one woman of color goes in and then leaves, and then another one comes in and leaves, almost like a one-to-one. We're not really seeing overall growth of women of color serving in the superintendency in this nation across, ethnic groups. Yet students of color are at 54% in this nation in public education. What do we do? How do we get over that hump? How do we truly turn the corner around seeing the need for representation, for bringing in new thought leadership, for boards of education, governors who are appointing state superintendents, to really look at a diverse pool that is representative of our nation's students? What are your thoughts about kind of how we make that happen? What do we need to do? Now, of course, I'm not asking you to solve this since this is a collective, but what are your thoughts?
Gosh, if I could change the world and be able to have the perfect strategy, I would say, I think that search consultants are able to see candidates for their leadership skills and the strengths that they bring, because I believe that many search firm consultants have been in the education field, so they see it and they get it. Board members bring different, diverse experiences, life experiences, background schema into their lens. And to have those merge together and bring those values in one space, I think is important. Now, I don't know what conversations happen behind the scenes when you're screening and you're looking at resumes and beautifully written cover letters. But my wish and dream across the country for students and staff is having this way to look at students and staff holistically. So over the last several years, we've been on a multi-year journey in Highline under the leadership of Dr. Susan Enfield and now Dr. Duran, been building this strength-based student profile and strength-based staff profile so that we can see the staff holistically. We see what their progress and their pathways and their aspirations are, and we're able to really be able to support them along the journey. Now, if we had something like that for potential superintendents and CEOs of school districts, what an amazing way that would be to be able to see the candidate in all of what they bring, instead of just a town hall interview, somebody who's really good at interviews, but may not have all of the other really important criteria that a holistic profile might be able to provide. Now, that is my dream and wish, and we can't like create something like that overnight for candidates. But I just think that expanding that profile and widening the lens is important. Why that's important, I believe, is that there are stereotypical biases, unconscious biases that humans hold. And as an Asian American woman who doesn't fulfill the stereotype of what the old school version of what Asian female women are supposed to be, there's an impact on what happens in your bias. And that's something that I have carried for many years in thinking about how I need to show up in different interviews that I've been in. And, this isn't just one specific district, but do I need to be more conservative and show up this way? Do I need to be more confident? And in both spaces, I've been overly confident, or maybe too quiet, or maybe too serious. So I really have to think about how I show up, because as Asian people, we are not Black, brown, or white. And oftentimes it's around the bias of maybe what that culture of that interview team may be. All that to say, what I really want to celebrate and really lift up is my recent interview experience that I had, where I was told that it was a competitive group of candidates. I felt so seen and valued, and it was such a positive experience. I was interviewed by over 22 people in a series of 3 rounds of interviews. And I felt like I knew that this was the right match when each time I walked away from those interviews, and I knew I got to be my authentic self. That makes me like a little emotional, just, all the experiences I've had, but I got to be my authentic self. I was valued, I was seen, and the team and my new leader saw the value in me and believed in me to be able to lead teaching and learning across 43 schools. And my takeaway from that experience is continue to be your authentic self. So when I think about search firms and others that are seeking to diversify, have the team be in that same mindset to allow the space and allow that culture to allow candidates to be their authentic self, because that is what's best for kids. We need people to show up as their authentic selves, because then their passion and their love for children is really going to come through.
Rebekah, you've given us so much to think about and reflect on with your words. Mm-hmm. And the whole concept of being able to walk into a room as a woman leader authentically, it's such an important conversation for us to keep having, allowing people to not fit into a box that is preconceived, as you stated, but rather be themselves. That's the beauty of the diversity that can and should exist in leadership if we're going to really serve our students, our beautifully diverse nation of students. So we have this opportunity coming up, and I am thrilled that you're going to be there and a part of it, of 200 women leaders across the nation coming together for the When Women Lead Summit, Education Summit on June 19th through the 21st on the beautiful Vancouver, Washington waterfront. And so I'm excited to actually host that here in my new hometown. And when you come into that space with other women executive leaders in June, how do you hope to kind of leverage that opportunity? Why be part of that? What are you looking forward to?
Well, congratulations for your inaugural event. I heard about it from Dr. Duran, and just your name keeps popping up. So first of all, just seeing the content about equity, excellence, women in leadership, and then Dr. K, I was very excited. So I just want to share what drew me. Then you've got this like A-list team of speakers. And I thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity to be in that same space, to be able to learn from the speakers, those that will be teaching us, and listening to their journey. Also, the opportunity for networking. 10 years ago, when the word networking would come up, I'm like, oh, that is not me. That's networking with vendors. No, thank you. But the networking that I have done in the different organizations that I've been participating in, like the League of Innovative Schools, through Digital Promise, Dr. Susan Enfield has introduced me to many of her trusted colleagues, her sister soups. And I have learned so much and have gained so much support throughout my journey, especially in the last maybe 5 to 8 years. I've really been able to build some authentic relationships and be able to just call on people when I have needed to, or when I see them at other conferences, being able to connect with them. So what I look forward to is the learning, but also building and enhancing the relationships that already exist, or new relationships that I can be able to build and foster.
Well, Rebekah, I need to correct you on one matter, and that is that the A-list includes you.
Okay.
So I'm excited to share your story with others, because you are part of that A-list. And what's beautiful about that is, when we talk about the A-list, we're talking about women who are really authentically leading in the equity space, are networking, are supporting one another, and are utilizing their voice and their sphere of influence to impact one another and to be able to lift up all of the students in our nation. And so you have a tremendous story. And so I'm excited about having you as part of this thought leadership that's coming together in a few weeks. And so I thank you for your time. I thank you for sharing your perspective. I think it is an important perspective for us to listen deeply to one another in order to grow and learn as leaders ourselves. So thank you, Rebekah. I am so just thankful for your leadership and what you're doing for students in this nation.
Thank you.